For a long time, Sheeta and Clair were considered not the greatest flyers out there. Both of them have amazing speed and resistance, but their base attack stats are some of the lowest in the game. As more and more stronger units got released, 25 and 26 attacks started to look worse and worse. However, with older units getting updated with new unique weapons, Sheeta and Clair were able to get themselves some cool new toys. Sheeta got the Wing Sword and Clair got the Rhomphaia Lance, both of which are some of the best looking weapons in the game, in my opinion. These two weapons are near identical, just that the Wing Sword is, well, a sword and Rhomphaia is a lance. Both of them are 16-my weapons that are effective against cavalry and army units. If you aren't aware, effective against weaponry increases the user's attack stat by 1.5 times when matched against the right enemy, which is a lot. This means that when Sheeta and Clair fight cavalry and army units, they will be getting a ton of extra damage despite their low starting attack stats. If you refine either weapon with Divine Dew and choose a special upgrade, then it gets another effect. If Sheeta or Clair's speed is higher than the enemy's speed stat, then they gain a special cooldown charge +1 per attack. This is the exact same as the Flashing Blade A skill. Sheeta has a blazing 37 speed and Clair is right behind her with 36 speed. With the right skills, these two can easily proc Flashing Blade, and that means they can charge their specials faster. More specials usually means more damage, so that also helps Sheeta and Clair patch up their major weakness. Now this isn't the first time we've had weapons that are effective against two unit types, but understandably you don't normally see Armor Slayers or Rider's Banes on a ton of units. Being effective against 2 out of 4 movement types is actually pretty good, and in Arena you always see cavalry and army units. I think the dual utility is nice for PvE content, especially on maps with reinforcements that tend to have all types of enemies. I do think these weapons scale amazingly with every point of attack you can get. No one wants to be taking 1.5 times extra damage, although technically that isn't the correct way to think about it. If you aren't familiar with the exact way this game calculates damage, then just know that the effective against bonus is a 1.5 times multiplier to the attack stat before all other calculations are done. This ends up being way more than 1.5 times damage in most, if not all cases. For example, Clair's neutral 26 attack plus a 16 from Rhomphaia puts her at 42 attack. If Clair were to make attack on a blue unit with 35 defense, she would deal 7 damage. If that enemy was a blue army unit, then with the 1.5 times multiplier, Clair would have an effective 63 attack and now deals 28 damage, which is 4 times as much than before. Effective against weapons are very powerful when fulfilling their conditions. Because Wingsword and Rhomphaia have dual effective against capabilities, they make Sheeta and Clair really good units to have on standby for game modes that you need to teamcraft on the fly. Modes like Arena Assault and Squad Assault give you the opportunity to put in these two units when you need someone to deal with a lot of cavalry or army units. Even in rival domains, I think these are good weapons because there are twice as many enemies on the field, and generally I feel like the enemy teams always have a mix of units. Not even including the special upgrade, I think Wingsword and Rhomphaia are pretty good unique weapons. Now if you do spend the Divine Dew to grab the special upgrade, then I think you get an amazing weapon. Flashing Blade is already a pretty good skill, and having it on a weapon is really cool. It solves one of the problems with effective against weapons in general, being that they are only good against one class type and are weaker than silver weapons versus every other enemy type. Dual effective against effects help expand your advantageous matchups, but adding Flashing Blade on top means you actually do have something to fight against the non-effective against enemies. Wingsword and Rhomphaia basically have the effects of 3 different weapons if you know that Iris Sword has a Flashing Blade effect. It's a 3-for-1 value pack. You should also know that flyers can't use the Flashing Blade A skill, so Sheeta and Clair have some exclusivity with the Flashing Blade upgrade. Flyers have a hard time getting special cooldown reduction since they also can't use Steady or Warding Breath. Sheeta and Clair would be horrible users of Heavy Blade, so they end up with a pretty nice compromise. Adding on to that, Sheeta and Clair have the speed stats to make really good use of Flashing Blade, and of course a plus speed nature, good skills, and buffs will also help them outspeed the competition. Now something I don't have the answer to is whether or not you should choose a plus attack or plus speed nature for either of them. Plus attack is just more damage in general, plus it synergizes with the effective against damage multiplier. Plus speed helps them double more, and obviously that also helps proc Flashing Blade more. I think both have their uses, but if any of you have experience with either one of them, then please share your thoughts in the comments. Now I feel like I keep repeating this build, but it's just so powerful that it would be wrong not to mention it. Fury 3 gives Sheeta and Clair everything they need. More attack, more speed, and more defense since their base defense stats are quite low. This helps them hopefully survive a hit as they double slow army units. Despite the 1.5 times multiplier, their low starting base attack may make it hard to one-shot tanky armor or even cavalry units. Fury helps them win the first engagement and should put them into desperation range. With Desperation, if you do get a follow-up, those 2 straight hits should help take out full HP armor and cavalry units. Since Flashing Blade is also proccing, they will be able to charge and unleash a 2-turn special like Moonbow in that same round of combat. For Sheeta and Clair, I would choose Moonbow to fight against non-cavalry and army units better. You will of course want to give Sheeta and Clair all the attack and speed buffs they can get. Sheeta and Clair have 34 and 33 resistance respectively, which means they can be good mage checkers with distant counter. With this skill, Sheeta and Clair have even more utility options, and in PvE content and arena we definitely see a lot of cavalry mages, with armor mages being potent in arena. Pairing distant counter with quick riposte and distant defense turns both of them into mainly enemy phase units. You can also give them defense ploy as a C skill since we aren't improving their attack with an A skill. Now I still think you should be giving both of them attack and speed buffs from allies, but ploy type skills are an interesting option. I personally still have gripes with distant counter on flying units because of their innate weakness to archers. However, I don't think distant counter builds focused purely on mage tanking is that bad since there aren't a ton of ranged flying units available. Overall, the Winged Sword and Rhomphaia turned Clair and Sheeta into flying Swiss army knives. The dual effective against effects are great for having to deal with different enemy types, and in PvE content, which usually has a more varied cast of enemies, this ability to gain a huge advantage on a lot of units is really nice. When you add in the Flashing Blade upgrade, I think these weapons become even better. Again, just gaining some kind of effect against the non-effective against targets is super good because that means Sheeta and Clair won't be left with a useless weapon. Flashing Blade also synergizes with both of their high base speed stats, which you may want to improve further. I think with these weapons, Sheeta and Clair are much better units now. They can patch up their low base attack stats at least against a decent chunk of enemy types, and with Flashing Blade charging specials faster, they can have an easier time taking down enemies in general. I think the Winged Sword and Rhomphaia are useful even without the Flashing Blade upgrade because they can still act as great counters to cavalry and armor teams. They can really help you out in modes like Arena Assault. Hopefully you enjoyed this review of the Winged Sword and Rhomphaia. Now we are almost done with this series about flying units, but we still have one last video to go. Next time I'll be talking about Cordelia, the flyer who can basically do no wrong. I'll see you guys then.